Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent. Hello, I'm Alyson Grange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa. We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south. Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Russia says it has captured the village of Andrivka in Ukraine's Sumy region, as Kiev reported a Russian strike on the city that killed at least 3 people. At least 27 Palestinians killed and dozens wounded by Israeli fire near a food distribution site in southern Gaza, marking the third straight day of chaos and bloodshed, disrupting aid operations. More than 200 inmates escaped from a jail in the southern Pakistani city of Karachi as they overpowered prison guards after being allowed to leave their cells following a series of earthquakes. Rwanda-backed M23 rebels in the Democratic Republic of Congo executed at least 21 civilians in the eastern city of Goma after their takeover this year, Human Rights Watch says in a new report. And Mongolia's prime minister resigns after losing parliamentary support following corruption claims that erupted into street protests last month. Hello and welcome. Our top focus is on Mali, which has witnessed twin terror attacks in the past 2 days. Both attacks linked to Al-Qaeda took place in Mali's historic city of Timbuktu and the border town of Boulikessi. Now in Boulikessi, terrorists seized an army base and killed several soldiers. In Timbuktu, a military airport also hosting Russian mercenaries was targeted. Now the first attack unfolded on Sunday. Terrorists stormed Boulikessi and seized a military base. More than 30 soldiers were killed in that assault. Now, several others are missing, with reports suggesting that some may have been taken hostage. The second attack occurred on Monday in Timbuktu, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Terrorists launched shells at the airport, where heavy gunfire was reported by the army, officials and local residents. The target was a military airport hosting Russian mercenaries. Now, the army says that it foiled the attempted infiltration of the camp. It says at least 14 attackers were killed and 31 others were arrested. Several weapons were also seized. Both attacks have been claimed by JNIM, an Islamist group linked to Al-Qaeda. JNIM was formed in March of 2017 as a merger of several militant factions. The group operates primarily across the Sahel region, including Mali and Burkina Faso. However, the Mali Islamist insurgency dates back to 2012. It has since spread across the Sahel, led by groups linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS. When Mali's military junta seized power in 2020, it cited worsening security as a key reason for the coup. The junta promised to restore stability. Like its military-led neighbors Burkina Faso and Niger, Mali expelled French and Western troops. Instead, these military governments turned to Russia, relying on Russian mercenaries to counter terror threats. Yet attacks have continued. The Sahel remains the global epicenter of terrorism, with Mali among the most severely affected. Since the start of May, over 400 soldiers have been killed in terror attacks on bases and towns across Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. In January, the three countries exited the ECOWAS regional bloc, which marked its 50th anniversary last month, to form a new alliance, the Alliance of Sahel States. The alliance aims at enhancing military cooperation. However, Mali and the other Sahel nations continue to grapple with relentless threat of extremism. Can these nations effectively combat terrorism and restore stability in a region torn by conflict? Now, to discuss further, we have with us Beverly Ochieng, a senior analyst at Control Risks, joining us live from Marrakesh in Morocco. Thank you for being with us, Beverly.
Thank you for having me, Alyson.
Now, what strategic significance do Boulikessi and Timbuktu hold that may have made them targets for the JNIM? And how does this align with the group's broader objectives in the Sahel region?
Well, Boulikessi has always been known as one of the most secure military camps in the central region, but it's very close to the border with Burkina Faso, and it appears as if this attack is a demonstration of the spillover effects of what the JNIM group has been doing in Burkina Faso, carrying out massive attacks. In 2019, there had been a previous attack in Boulikessi where nearly 40 soldiers were killed. It was also another twin attack in the central region, and reinforcements were added. With Timbuktu, it's a historic city, one of the well-known. In 2023, it had been under a blockade by JNIM. They were controlling some of the key access roads. In 2014, they lifted the blockade in a town called Lere, which is very close to the border with Mauritania. Of course, the army has made some strides in securing the Northern Territory. There was even a festival being held in Timbuktu in January this year, and the Minister of Culture welcomed foreign tourists for the first time in more than a decade. But this attack, both on Timbuktu and Boulikessi, is a demonstration by JNIM that the government will not be able to fully assert control as long as JNIM is active in these regions.
Yes. And what does the twin attack reveal about the current state of Mali's security forces and the effectiveness of regional or even international counterterrorism efforts?
I mean, there's a lot more pressure now on the Malian and the Sahelian military governments to be able to ensure that they both secure territory, that they're able to fight off militants, that they're able to secure populations. And this is primarily through the support of Russian paramilitaries, but also an alliance between Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. They formed what they're calling the Alliance of Sahel States, which is not just a political alliance, but also a joint counterinsurgency force of about 5,000 troops. They've already begun operations in parts of northern Mali. They've been in Ndelimani in the mid part of May in Kidal region. They've also heightened some operations in the tri-border area. But we are seeing that militants from JNIM in particular are spreading to areas where they haven't been before. So beyond just returning to the north, they're also going to the west and south. The Malian army plans to deploy or to increase its forces about 24,000 to move into areas where they have been vulnerable. But of course, JNIM will probably mount retaliatory attacks as a way of acquiring weapons, but also trying to expand.
Right. And Beverly, how might these attacks impact the political and the humanitarian situation in Mali, particularly in light of the ongoing instability following these military coups and the foreign troop withdrawals?
Well, what we're seeing is that there is a reduction in social services, especially in areas which are vulnerable to militant attacks. So despite the fact that there has been some efforts in returning government services in northern Mali, more than 1,000 schools across the country remain closed because of the insurgency. Hospitals and social services have also been disrupted. About 100 hospitals are not operational. There are nearly 500,000 people displaced in Mali alone. In Burkina Faso, it's 2 million. In Niger, about 500,000. It's becoming difficult to mobilize aid. Of course, the militaries have been moving convoys to these regions to try and mobilize aid and other support. But of course, there's a lot of pressure because they are reducing international partnerships, even with the entry of Russia and other new allies. So there's a lot to balance for these military governments, including long-term political stability.
Absolutely. Beverly, as always, great to have you on the show. Thank you for your detailed analysis there. From West Africa, we now shift focus to East Africa. Kenyan and Ugandan activists have made chilling revelations about sexual torture they allegedly faced while in detention in Tanzania. Kenyan human rights campaigner Boniface Mwangi and the Ugandan activist Agatha Oter made these allegations at a joint press conference in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. They were detained last month in Tanzania's commercial capital of Dar es Salaam. The duo had travelled to show support for Tanzanian opposition leader Tundu Lissu, who is facing a treason trial that could carry a potential death sentence. The activists described horrific abuse by Tanzanian security officers. They were allegedly abducted from their hotel room, then held for several days, interrogated, tortured, and dumped near their respective borders. Kenyan activist Mwangi recounted the brutal sexual torture at the hands of security agents. He said that he was stripped naked, hung upside down, and beaten on his feet. He broke down in tears as he shared his ordeal.
We were put on an upside position where my legs were up like this, my body's up, I'm stuck naked. And then they started beating my feet. So they would beat me and massage my feet. Beat me and massage my feet. I was screaming so hard, I couldn't even, there was no tears coming out because of how painful it was. And one of them said, put his hand in his mouth. So they put my hand in my mouth. Then they would tell me, stop screaming, the kids are sleeping. Say you're feeling nice, say you're feeling good. Then they say Asante Samia, Asante Samia. So I say Asante to their president. Then they'll push hard and then pull it out again.
Award-winning Ugandan activist Agatha Otoher said that she too was blindfolded, tied up and assaulted while in custody. She described the torture that she endured as part of a larger pattern of repression in Tanzania.
I think the psychological torture of those days of driving for me was worse than the physical torture I endured earlier. Because I kept thinking they are going to throw us in the park to be eaten by animals. Or sometimes I would hear as if the ocean is roaring near us and I would think they would throw me in the ocean. And you are thinking that, you would be one of those people whose families never know whether you are dead or alive, whether you would return or not.
After their release, both activists were dumped near the borders of their countries from where they made their way home. Tanzanian authorities have not officially commented on their detention, but on the 19th of May, the day of their arrest, President Samia Suluhu Hassan made public remarks. She warned foreign activists against invading and interfering in Tanzanian affairs. She also urged security forces not to allow ill-mannered individuals from other countries to cross the line. Tanzania is witnessing a deepening crackdown on political opposition and civil society, just months ahead of general elections scheduled for October. The East African nation, with a population of 65 million, has been ruled by the same party since independence in 1961. Opposition leader Tundu Lissu, a prominent challenger to President Hassan, has been arrested on charges of incitement to block the polls, which his supporters call politically motivated. His party has now been banned from participating in the election. Just last year, a senior opposition figure was found dead after being abducted. President Hassan condemned the killing, But rights groups say that her government is failing to protect democratic freedoms. International concerns continue to mount over Tanzania's escalating crackdown on dissent, and these harrowing accounts of torture have only deepened the fears. And shifting focus to the island nation of Madagascar now, which, like many other African countries, is rushing to protect its economy from the steep tariffs by the Donald Trump administration. In April, the US president threatened a 47% reciprocal tariff on one of the world's highest on Madagascar. Now, the latest replaced it with a 10% universal levy. Donald Trump has set an 8th of July deadline for most countries to strike a deal or risk reinstatement of the tariffs. Now, after China and France, the US is the third largest trading partner for the Indian Ocean island nation, with a total trade of $822 million in 2024. Madagascar, the world's largest vanilla producer, is in talks with Washington to resolve their trade imbalances after Donald Trump's tariff announcement. So, protect its economy from the tariff shocker, Madagascar is forming new partnerships and alliances. It is now seeking to boost investments from the United Arab Emirates to push its tourism and energy sectors. Madagascar and the UAE are also in talks about potential investments in sugar and vanilla processing plants, luxury hotels to support a 1 million tourist goal, and energy projects to meet the rising demands. The island nation is also in talks with Emirates Airlines, one of the world's largest carriers, to start daily direct flights between Dubai and Antananarivo, the capital. Now, this would not just boost tourism, but also trade through air freight. Earlier this year, Madagascar and the UAE also signed an economic partnership to facilitate trade. The Indian Ocean island also plans to open an embassy in Abu Dhabi soon. The United Arab Emirates says that it is not just a new trade route for Madagascar, but a platform that can help it connect to other markets of the world. Not just Madagascar, the UAE has been striking deals and making investment pledges across Africa to expand its influence. The Gulf power aims to diversify its income beyond oil. In 2023, the UAE was the top investor in Africa, contributing $44 billion in investment. Last year, Abu Dhabi Wealth Fund, ADQ, also announced an investment of $35 billion in Egypt to develop land on its Mediterranean coast. It's not just the UAE. Other countries in West Asia have shown growing interest in Africa. They have either expressed intent or closed deals worth at least $6 billion in African energy assets in the past few weeks. Among them is Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi firms like ACWA Power and Red Sea Gateway Terminal that are backed by the kingdom's $925 billion sovereign wealth fund are actively investing or bidding for assets in South Africa's energy sector. So, will the West Asian powerhouse be the shield for African nations against Donald Trump's tariffs? And for our final story, let's take a look at a major global pledge from one of the world's richest men. Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates has announced that the majority of his $200 billion foundation spending will be directed to Africa over the next 2 decades. Speaking in the Ethiopian capital of Addis Ababa at a gathering, Gates said that most of the foundation's funding would go toward improving health and education across the continent.
I made a commitment recently for all my resources to go to the Gates Foundation, and I'll say publicly for the first time tomorrow in the great opportunity I have to give a speech on the Nelson Mandela Hall here. I'll say that the majority of those resources will be focused on helping with the challenges in Africa.
Gates' comments came barely a month after the billionaire said that he would give away 99% of his vast fortune by 2045, the year the foundation plans to wind down. His pledge also comes amid deep cuts to U.S. foreign aid to Africa, with HIV treatment and other humanitarian programs already affected. Concerns about the future of healthcare on the continent are mounting.
This is a challenging time. A lot of the rich countries, including my country, the United States, are cutting back on their aid budgets at the same time as the interest payments are a challenge. I'll do my best to make sure that those cuts are minimized, that we can get those resources back, and to partner with you to make sure that whatever resources we have, we use innovation to make sure that we can have the most impact possible.
At the event in Ethiopia, Gates said that his foundation, which has a long history of operating in Africa, would mainly focus on improving primary health care in countries. He urged governments to embrace artificial intelligence, citing Rwanda as a success story, where AI-powered ultrasound is helping detect high-risk pregnancies. Gates also named Ethiopia, Mozambique, Nigeria, Zambia and Zimbabwe as countries showing strong leadership in health innovation, despite facing immense fiscal pressures. Welcoming Bill Gates' announcement, Mozambique's former First Lady, Graça Machel, said that it was coming at a moment of crisis, and she emphasized the importance of enduring partnerships in Africa's development journey. Her comments echoed 2 decades of collaboration between the Gates Foundation and African partners to save lives, develop vaccines, and to strengthen systems. Building on that legacy, the foundation says it will now focus on 3 core goals. First, ending preventable deaths of mothers and babies. Second, ensuring future generations grow up free from deadly infectious diseases. And third, lifting millions of people out of poverty. But with the foundation set to shut down by 2045, it leaves only a 20-year window to deliver on its promises and to prove whether private philanthropy can drive public impact at scale. And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.